In 1947, a Belgian linguist named Henri Cazaux opened a mislabeled crate in the Louvre's Eastern Antiquities Department and found a tablet that had been sitting there since 1931. The crate was marked Administrative Fragments, Non-Priority. Cazaux almost didn't open it. When he did, he sat with the tablet for 4 hours without moving, no notes, no food, just reading. His journal entry that evening was one sentence: "I have found the document the priests were afraid to bury with their kings. I understand now why they buried it alone." The tablet was assigned catalog number A07759, transferred between restricted storage facilities 3 times since 1947, never displayed publicly. What it contains is not a prayer, not a hymn, not a creation myth. It is a procedural document. 9 numbered registers, each one describing a specific stage of a process the Sumerians believed every human consciousness passes through, not after death, not during death, but in the window immediately before the final choice is made. Before the 9 registers begin, the tablet states one thing: at the center of this process, not at the end, not at the beginning, but precisely in the middle, every consciousness encounters something. The scribe did not call it a god, did not call it a judge. He used a compound Sumerian term that Cazaux spent 3 months translating before settling on 3 words: the version that waited. The encounter with that figure is what the entire procedure is organized around. Everything before it is preparation. Everything after it is consequence. And what happens during the encounter is determined entirely by what a person did or chose not to do across the lifetime that preceded it. The opening declaration, rendered by Cazaux: "This is not for the dead. This is for the ones who are still choosing." A07759 is small, roughly the dimensions of a human hand, slightly thicker than most administrative tablets of the same period. The clay is darker than standard Mesopotamian pieces, almost gray. The cuneiform pressed into its surface is unusually deliberate, unhurried. Cazaux's paleographic analysis placed its composition in the late Ur III period, approximately 2100 to 2000 BCE, but the language embedded in the ceremonial passages was older, significantly older, the kind of layering that occurs when a scribe copies something so ancient that certain words have no living equivalent, left in their original form like fossils preserved inside newer stone. The tablet was already ancient when it was written down. A07759 is written in ceremonial cuneiform, a script reserved for documents the Sumerians considered too important to be misread and too consequential to be displayed publicly. Of approximately 500,000 recovered Sumerian tablets, fewer than 200 use this script. A07759 is one of only 9 containing procedural instruction, step-by-step guidance for something every human being would eventually face. Of those 9, it is the only one dealing with what happens before death rather than after it. The scribe treated that distinction as the entire point. What happens after the final choice is already determined by the choice itself. The only window where preparation makes a measurable difference is before it. Most consciousnesses, the tablet records, arrive at that window having never been told it existed. The tablet does not begin at the moment of death. It begins days before. The process the Sumerians called the loosening, a gradual separation of consciousness from the body, beginning before biological death, proceeding through identifiable stages, concluding at the threshold of what the following 8 registers describe. 3 markers indicate it has begun. First, the dying person becomes aware of a direction, not up, not down, not any orientation that exists within embodied experience. A pull, that only becomes perceptible as the body's demands begin to recede. Second, they begin perceiving presences that others in the room cannot perceive. They reach towards them, speak to them. To everyone watching, they appear engaged with something that is not there. Third, ordinary concerns lose their urgency, not because they are resolved, but because something else is asserting a more immediate claim. The loosening cannot be stopped, cannot be accelerated. One variable only: whether the consciousness undergoing it recognizes. No explanation has ever been offered. Before we continue, the evidence is real. The interpretation is yours. What do you think happened? Leave your theory in the comments. And if you're interested in mysteries that history never fully explained, subscribe and join us for the next investigation. What is happening. A consciousness that recognizes it is recorded as the prepared arrival. A consciousness that does not is recorded as the confused arrival. The distinction is not about comfort. The confused arrival enters the next stage in a condition of specific vulnerability, open to something the procedure contains that the prepared arrival is equipped to navigate. What that something is, Register 1 does not say. It says only that the vulnerability is real, and that the first encounter of the procedure is where it matters most. At the completion of the loosening, the consciousness arrives at key.u.sh.mh, the great standing place. Three things occur at arrival, in this sequence without variation. First, everything that constituted identity during embodied life is held aside, not erased, suspended. Name, history, accumulated self-understanding, temporarily withdrawn from operation. Present, but no longer the interface through which the consciousness is functioning. In this suspended state, the consciousness first perceives the standing place. Structured, distinct regions, consistent rules, not a realm, not a void, a location with internal organization that every arriving consciousness must navigate, and that does not adjust itself to accommodate what any individual expected to find. Second, the consciousness perceives other arrivals. Third, it becomes aware of a property it has never previously been able to perceive. Not the place itself, not the other arrivals themselves. Something about them. Immediately visible, involuntarily perceived. The scribe ended Register 2 without describing what this property is. He noted only in the final line that it operates in both directions. In embodied life, perception of other people is mediated. You see what they present, what they have chosen to allow to be visible. The standing place removes that, all of it. What becomes perceptible instead is what the scribe called the recognition of weight, a property as direct as temperature, requiring no interpretation. Every consciousness carries a weight, a density accumulated across a lifetime of choices, actions, and the things a person chose not to do when doing them was available. In the standing place, the weight of every consciousness present is perceptible to every other, not inferred, not interpreted, known. What each person actually was, every private choice, every moment of understanding acted on or refused, every repair made or left unmade, the full accumulated reality of an entire life, perceptible in an instant. Now stop. The scribe recorded one additional detail here. Cazaux set it apart from everything around it, a full line above, a full line below. The perception operates in both directions. You see them, they see you. Every choice made where no one was watching, every justification constructed for something you already knew was an evasion. Every
standing
moment
place
you
has
told
distinct
yourself
regions.
didn't count.
The region where a
It
consciousness
counts.
arrives
It is the
determined
first
by a
thing
single
every
quality,
consciousness in the
not
standing
belief,
place
not
knows
religious
about you
practice,
before
not what
you have
was
said
suffered
anything,
or sincerely
before
held.
you have done
The
anything.
determining quality the scribe defined across 3 separate lines. Whether the consciousness ever voluntarily confronted, without reframing, without self-protection, what it left undone. Not once, as a practice, repeated across time. Consciousnesses that practiced this arrive in the inner regions. Consciousnesses that did not arrive in the outer. The scribe wrote that most arrivals are outer, no number attached, only the observation that the outer regions are where the longest work of the procedure occurs, work that cannot be abbreviated or escaped, done earlier in embodied life by choice, or later in the outer regions, under conditions the consciousness does not control. The content of the work is identical in both cases. What differs is who initiates it. In embodied life, the consciousness begins voluntarily. In the outer regions, something else begins it. Register 5 names what that else is. Every consciousness in the standing place encounters the same thing. Inner region or outer, prepared arrival or confused, it makes no difference to this. The scribe recorded no exceptions. He introduced Register 5 with one statement. What follows occurs without variation. No preparation prevents it. Preparation only changes what it contains. The encounter is called the offering. It is not a vision, not a life review, not a meeting with anyone previously lost. It is a figure, built from one source only. Everything the consciousness understood during its embodied life and chose not to act on. Every moment of clarity that arrived and was set aside for later. Every repair that was available and deferred until the person who needed it was gone or the moment had passed. Every path that was visible and not walked. Every truth that was fully understood and found repeatedly more convenient to leave unexamined. None of it was lost. All of it was retained. All of it was organized into the figure. This is the version that waited, the term from the opening declaration now finally described. It has been assembling since the first moment the consciousness understood something and turned away from what that understanding required. Every subsequent turning added to it. Every avoidance refined it. Every year of choosing comfort over confrontation made it more complete. By the time the consciousness arrives in the standing place, the version that waited is finished. It knows everything. It was present for every moment the consciousness lived, in the private moments, the unwitnessed ones, the ones that felt too small to constitute anything, the ones the consciousness told itself didn't count. It was there, collecting. It does not accuse, it does not mourn, it shows. In sequence, without omission, everything the consciousness chose in each specific moment of choosing not to become. And then it waits. Not for an apology, not for a defense, for one thing. That the consciousness look at what is being shown, completely, without the mechanisms practiced across a lifetime of turning away, and remain in that looking until the showing is finished. This is the choice the opening declaration named. This is not for the dead. This is for the ones who are still choosing. The choice is not made at death. It is made now, every day. In every moment, a person encounters what they do not want to see about themselves and either remains in that seeing or moves away from it. What the consciousness does when the version that waited steps forward is determined entirely by which of those two things it spent a lifetime doing. Register 6 describes what follows in each case.
The consciousness that witnesses, that remains in the looking until the showing is complete, moves forward. Register 6 is primarily concerned with the other case, the consciousness that cannot witness, that turns from what is being shown, that finds a way to make the showing mean less than it means. It does not move forward. It remains in the outer regions, where what begins is what the tablet calls the slow unwinding. The slow unwinding is not punishment. The scribe stated this with unusual deliberateness. It is the same confrontation the consciousness refused to initiate voluntarily, now initiated by the standing place itself, at a pace the location determines, without the consciousness's cooperation or consent. The version that waited shows the same things in the same sequence without omission. What differs is what the consciousness carries when it is finished. The scribe drew one distinction that Cazaux underlined more heavily than any passage in the translation. A consciousness that witnesses voluntarily carries forward what the scribe called the shape of the one who chose, something that persists through the remainder of the procedure and determines what becomes accessible in Register 7. A consciousness processed through the slow unwinding arrives at the same point, but it arrives having been acted upon rather than having acted. The scribe's comparison, two people crossing difficult ground, one who navigates it themselves, one who is carried. Both reach the other side. Only one knows how. Only one carries that knowledge forward. The slow unwinding ends when the version that waited determines the showing is complete, not when the consciousness is ready, when the version that waited is finished. The first 6 registers describe a procedure operating on a consciousness passing through it. Register 7 describes what has already passed through and returned to the boundary, not to embodied life, to the edge of the standing place. The tablet calls them the ones who returned to ask, not gods, not assigned authorities, consciousnesses that completed the procedure entirely and came back because they carried something that could not be used where they went. The scribe called it remainder understanding, knowledge oriented specifically toward embodied existence, insight that retained its shape in the standing place but became unusable beyond it. So it was brought back to the boundary, left there, for whoever arrived with the capacity to receive it. That capacity is not universal. The remainder is perceptible only to consciousnesses that witnessed the version that waited voluntarily. Consciousnesses that arrived through the outer regions do not perceive what waits at the boundary. What the remainder contains, the scribe did not specify. He recorded only that consciousnesses which receive it are changed in a way that affects what becomes accessible at the door. Then one additional observation without commentary. The ones who returned to ask were not the first. There have always been consciousnesses at the boundary, going back, the tablet states, further than Sumerian historical memory extends. What was left there before the Sumerians arrived, the tablet does not say. Everything in the procedure leads here, the door. Every consciousness arrives at it. The scribe used the same Sumerian word used for physical doors, an opening through which passage either occurs or does not. It does not announce itself, does not explain itself. It simply is. And the consciousness arrives in front of it with everything it carried through the procedure and nothing else. 2 directions. The first is return, back to embodied existence, a new body, a new life, no accessible memory of anything that occurred in the standing place. The scribe did not describe return as punishment. He described it as the default, not chosen, but what remains when the other direction cannot be perceived. The confused arrival inclines toward it from the moment of entry. The slow unwinding deepens the inclination. By the time the door is reached, return is not a decision, it is a direction the consciousness is already facing. The second direction the scribe did not name. He used the term the continued proceeding throughout, movement without specified destination. Three things recorded about it. Consciousnesses that take the second direction do not return to embodied existence. They proceed to whatever the standing place opens onto, and they eventually become the ones who returned to ask. The factor determining which direction is perceptible is not external. No authority in the procedure makes this determination. It is the accumulated consequence of everything that preceded arrival at the door. Whether the consciousness witnessed voluntarily, whether the shape of the one who chose remained intact, whether the remainder was received. Consciousnesses carrying these things arrive at the door with both directions perceptible. Consciousnesses that do not arrive with one. The scribe wrote that the door reflects exactly what the consciousness brought to it, nothing more, nothing less. What was built across an entire lifetime in the small, private, unwitnessed moments is what the door sees, and the door does not adjust. The ninth register is 11 lines. The scribe introduced them. What follows was not composed for this tablet. It is older than this tablet. It is given here because it is in danger of being forgotten. 3 requirements for the prepared arrival. Not suggestions, requirements. First, every day, without exception, engage in voluntary confrontation with the unfinished version in the form available to embodied life. Identify, with genuine willingness to receive an accurate answer, what was understood today and not acted on. What was seen and immediately turned from. What was left in the same condition it occupied yesterday. The purpose is not improvement. The purpose is recognition. A consciousness that has performed this confrontation hundreds of times will recognize the version that waited upon encounter, because it has already seen that figure in small daily form. The encounter will not be foreign, it will be familiar, and familiarity in that moment is the difference between witnessing and turning away. Second, develop the capacity to perceive what other people actually are beneath what they present. Technical preparation, not ethical aspiration, for the conditions of the standing place, where this perception is immediate and total. A consciousness that has practiced it arrives oriented. A consciousness that has not arrives overwhelmed. Third, marked by the scribe as the most consequential. When confronting what you do not want to see about yourself, when you locate the moment of avoidance, when you feel the movement toward a more comfortable interpretation beginning, do not complete that movement. Return to the looking. Hold it until it is finished, not until it is bearable, until it is finished. Most people begin this and do not complete it. They find the discomfort, they move before the looking is done, and in doing so, they provide the version that waits with more material. Every avoidance is retained. Every completed confrontation reduces what the version will have to show. The tablet's final recorded observation. A consciousness that has practiced these 3 requirements consistently arrives in the standing place not ambushed by the encounter. It arrives in continuation. The version that waited will still be present, the showing will still occur, but the consciousness that has already looked repeatedly in the moments when looking was optional arrives already knowing what it is facing. The scribe called this the only advantage the procedure permits. It cannot be inherited, cannot be granted by any tradition or authority, cannot be acquired at the moment of arrival. It accumulates. In the private moments when a person looked honestly at what they actually were, and did not look away. Cazaux completed his translation in 1949. He shared it with 4 colleagues, none published. He died in 1961. His translation notes were donated to the Louvre and are held in the restricted section of the Department of Oriental Antiquities. Most access requests have been declined without explanation. AO7759 itself was last confirmed present in a non-public storage facility in 2021. It has never been exhibited. The tablet does not argue for its credibility. It records the procedure, and it addressed itself, from its first line to its last, to one category of reader only: the ones who are still choosing. The version that waited is not assembled at death. It is being assembled now. Out of every moment you understood something clearly and found a reason to return to it later. Out of every confrontation you began and stepped back from before it was finished. Out of every private choice, the ones no one witnessed, the ones that felt too minor to constitute anything, where moving toward comfort was easier than staying in the looking. Those moments are not neutral. They are material. And the figure being built from them is patient. It will be complete. When the loosening begins, whenever it begins, it will have everything you gave it, every piece of understanding you turned away from, every version of yourself you could see clearly and chose one more time not to become. The showing will include all of it, in sequence, without omission. The question is simpler than anything that follows from it. What is it building itself from, today, in this moment, in whatever you do next?